Yeah, we do prefer live, but this is second best.
Okay, it's 12:15. We'll call the meeting to order. Our first materials committee meeting of the year. We have a couple of things on the agenda. The first one involves an appeal. We'll see how time goes, how much. I guess you're the only one that's not on the committee, Owen James. We'll just see how much time to have non-committee members jump in, because I want to make sure we get to the second agenda too. That one we can. Okay, so we received an appeal for a person's request for reconsideration of material of a book. I'm just going to recap briefly what that process involves. A person can submit a request for reconsideration of material. It goes through a review process by designated staff. Their recommendation goes to the director, and the director informs the person who had submitted the request. If that person is not satisfied with the answer, they can appeal to the board. And so that's what we have here. We've received, in this case, a person has appealed the book George. It was later republished as Melissa. Its target audience is grades 3 through 7, ages 8 to 12. It's in our juvenile collection. The book description starts, George is a 10-year-old boy who wants to be a girl. When people look at George, they think they see a boy, but she knows she's not a boy, she knows she's a girl. So the person has appealed this based on the following objections. He objects to the author describing gender dysphoria or rejecting one's God-given sex as normal and good. And the example he gives, I think the scene is George is in the bathtub. She tried not to think about what was between her legs, but there it was, bobbing in front of her. And then another point, George knew it could be done. A boy could become a girl. And this is called transitioning, when you take hormones or have surgery. The person also objected on grounds that this shows normalizing behavior, which rejects God's given sex, is harmful. Normalizing behavior, which rejects God's given sex, is harmful, causing many adverse consequences. Sex is a biological reality, and the suppression of this truth leads to significant confusion, I think that word is instability, and destructive behavior. The person requested that the library remove the book from the library system. The response letter was that the library system collection, development, and maintenance policy acknowledges that any item in the collection may offend someone, and only individuals can determine what is most appropriate for their needs. While we recognize that you would like George to be removed from the library system's collection, we have decided to keep it, given the title has continued to be borrowed since being added to the library system collection in 2016. And then the person was advised they could appeal to the Materials Collection Committee, who in turn would recommend to the whole board. The patron disagreed with that response and appealed to the Materials Collection Committee with the following, on the following grounds. He acknowledged receipt of the letter from the director and wanted opportunity for additional consideration. Acknowledged it is my understanding that the library policy requires inappropriate material restricted from children and removed despite Mrs. James' citation of the collection and maintenance policy. In quotes, only individuals can determine what is most appropriate for their needs. Furthermore, Mrs. James Jane's reliance on the book being borrowed does not substantiate that it is considered appropriate or that a leadership maintain it in their collection. So before us we have some options. We can move to or vote to agree and uphold the patron's request to remove the book from the library. We could agree to support the library's position to keep the book in the juvenile collection, or you could suggest a third option, something else. So I open it up for any moves.
What one,
Oh wait, we're gonna just do the committee first, please? Just so we can get the committee.
I think every board member has the right to.
Right, but in a committee, it's a working committee, Brian, so first we're gonna open up to the committee to discuss and then to the other board members.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the full board that we remove George from the library collection, both the physical copies and the electronic resources. And I'd like to ask Marcia if it would be all right to make some comments about that. Greenville County taxpayer has asked the library to remove George from the library collection on the basis that it describes gender dysphoria and rejects that biological sex is normal and good. In his appeal, he claims that the book promotes confusion and destructive behavior. I've read the book and find his concerns to be true and justified. The book, which has a target audience of children aged 8 to 12, talks about children's genitalia. It teaches that parents are not safe. And it normalizes the idea of biological males dominating in women's roles. And it talks about medical transitioning and puberty blockers for minors. The book talks about the genitals of children and uses negative languages when referencing male anatomy. George, the 10-year-old protagonist, is a biological male who uses female pronouns throughout the book. George hates the boys' bathroom in his school. He says it's the, quote, worst room in the school because it's, quote, about being a boy, and when boys are in there, they like to talk about what is between their legs. There's other references which Marshall already read from the appeal. The book for children teaches that parents are not safe or accepting. This theme runs from the first chapter, which is, of course, titled Secrets, through to the final pages. George learns from his brother how to clear the internet history on his mom's computer so he can read about puberty blockers without her knowing. He tells his friends that his mom's treatment of him is unfair because she continues to treat him like a biological boy. This book normalizes biological males dominating women's roles, a concern in an age where men are dominating women's sports. George wants the main part in the school play. He is told that he can't compete against the girls for the part because that would not be fair to the girls. But George finds a way to play the part anyway, and the book makes it clear that he is better at acting in that girl part than any of the girls in his school. But most concerning of all, the book gives information on medical transitioning. The earliest mention is in chapter 3, which Marcia already referenced, but I'll read it again. So George knew it could be done, a boy could become a girl. Those types of references to medical transitioning continue throughout the book. The book talks about gender reassignment surgery, puberty blockers, and cross-dressing. In chapter 9, George's brother makes a motion of cutting off genitals, asking if George plans to, quote, go all the way. The book ends with George being delighted that he is wearing little girls' underwear covered in tiny red hearts. The long-term effects of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones have not been studied. I can't help but think that the majority of Greenville County is opposed to their tax dollars being used to purchase and maintain a book in our collection that targets children with the message that discomfort with biology should be treated with hormones that lead to sterilization. I don't believe there is a parent here today who wants their taxes funding books that teaches kids that undermining parents is a safer alternative than talking to them. A book that tells kids to clear their internet history and hide their identities. We are considering this book today because of a taxpayer request. As a publicly funded institution, there is only one thing we have to consider in this appeal: the community standards of Greenville County. The publisher's recommendations are irrelevant. The author's intentions are irrelevant. My personal point of view has little relevance except in as much as I am a resident of Greenville County and a taxpayer. In this age, where the standards of publishers and writers are moving further and further from the community standards of Greenville, I am convinced that this book is not an appropriate use Because I believe that I am compelled to move that we honor the patron's request and remove this book and all electronic resources from our collection.
Okay, we have a motion to remove the book from the collection. Anyone second that?
Is it open for discussion?
Not yet, we will if it doesn't pass.
Do you not have discussion prior to the vote?
There hasn't been a second yet.
Need a second?
No second?
Yes.
Okay, motion failed. Another motion?
Do we have a discussion on the fail?
No.
No, okay. I would like to propose, that the book be moved to, the PEC, and also a bigger discussion on, materials, possibly being moved to the PEC, PEC being the Parenting and Early Childhood Collection.
Okay, right now we're only, looking at George, not at other materials, but we have a motion to move George to the parent early childhood section of the library. Is there a second? I second it. Discussion? Now we can have discussion.
My only comment for consideration is, I think we should need to be cognizant of this appeal from citizens seems to be religious based, and so I'm just concerned about censoring of materials based on a religious perspective. If we were to have taxpaying citizens of Jewish heritage or Muslim heritage recommend that we remove books because they promote eating pork, if that, so I think, I don't know that I disagree with Jane's motion, but I just think we need to be cognizant of, are we censoring materials based on religious appeal?
Anyone want to address that?
I think that's fair. And I think the things that Elizabeth brought up, about, we don't know the long-term effects of puberty blockers or transitioning. We're seeing more and more, people transition back to their gender at birth, because the things that were being, promoted to them that would happen aren't happening. And so I think there's still a lot to be determined there. What I would like to back up what Elizabeth said is, when I read the book or listened to it on audio, this division between the mom and the child, there was really no discussion with mom. There was the hiding of the internet stuff from mom, and that's why my proposal of moving this book to parenting and early childhood is because I want to have the library recognize that the primary source of education for children is their parents. And so allowing a parent to make that decision for their child to have this book or not have this book. Because there are a lot of things in this book that a 9 or a 10-year-old is not going to fully comprehend and doesn't comprehend the consequences of some of these decisions. And so that's my reasoning behind moving it. But I agree with what you're saying about how some of these concerns are being brought forth. The patron certainly has the right to frame it in that way, but you're right, we have to take everything into consideration. And I'll go back to what Elizabeth is saying about the irrelevancy of what the author meant and what the publisher means. It's what Greenville County residents value, and I think that's what we're being charged with today.
I just wonder if we should maybe, prior to the full board, vote, seek, I don't know if we have an attorney, if the county attorney would,
Well, we'll let the full board do that, whatever's based on this decision.
yeah, I just wonder if, we should consult
said, the argument, is framed with a God-given Christian perspective, but the base of the argument is that gender dysphoria, the presentation that it's normal and good, they object to, and also the normalizing of something that Elizabeth has already mentioned has potentially dangerous consequences. I'm just saying those are their arguments, whether they were coming from his Christian or God-given perspective. The arguments are based on those facts. Is there any more discussion on, we have a motion to place George in PC. Does anyone else want to weigh in? Okay then, motion to move George to PC. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. That will go before the full board next week. Okay. Second item follows on the heels of George. Actually, concerns of policy revision for our materials collection. We haven't had a policy so far dealing with this issue because one, it's a relatively new explosion the last decade. It hasn't been addressed. So although this was our first challenge, really basing around the idea of gender identity, that broad umbrella, I expect also that there are more challenges coming. So we need to, as far as I'm concerned, have a policy in place so we have something to measure things by. So I'll ask if anyone wants to entertain a motion for the following revision, which I will read. The library recognizes parents are the primary source of education for their children, and that they have a fundamental right and responsibility to direct the upbringing and education of children under their control, including issues of moral, social, physical, civic, and spiritual development. To that end, materials targeting audiences aged 0 to 12, or materials with characters who are 12 years old or younger, in which the illustrations, themes, or storylines affirm, portray, or discuss changing the appearance of a minor's gender in ways inconsistent with a minor's biological sex will be located in the Parenting and Early Childhood collection, specifically or including social transitioning, pronouns or dress inconsistent with biological sex, medical or surgical procedures such as puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, or surgical procedures for the purpose of altering biological sex, and issues of gender fluidity, the possibility of changing genders at will or being no gender at all. Does anyone want to move for that? I move. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. This is also open to discussion.
I've got some wording suggestions, wording change suggestions I'd like to go through. So at the first sentence where it says the library recognizes parents, I think that should read the library recognizes parents or legal guardians. And in that same paragraph where it says an education of children under their control, I would change control to care so that it would read an education of children under their care. The second paragraph, I would suggest that it read, to that end, materials targeting audiences aged 0 to 12, in which the illustrations, themes, or storylines promote, portray, or discuss changing the appearance of a minor's gender through puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, or surgical procedures for the purpose of altering biological sex. be located in the parenting early childhood PEC collection period, and then end it there. So I would strike including in the bullet points, and from that paragraph I'd be striking the words or materials with characters who are 12 years old or younger.
Okay, the bullet points, as far as I'm concerned, are specifically clear for the staff to have measures, because this addresses altering biological sex, and any materials will start out or talk about pronouns as being a very part of social transitioning and cross-dressing. Studies have shown that most of the children that start out and are introduced to this consider and go on to explore the next levels, which involve puberty blockers. And once that, it's a high percentage that moves straight into medical or surgical procedures. I think there's nothing wrong with the bullet points personally. Legal guardian, I would consider that. Let's see what the committee actually thinks, and children under their care. Does anybody have any feedback on that?
Yeah, let me just give a couple of
Wait,
comments.
no, we have, this is his committee, so
The first two paragraphs to me are fine. I have no problem with that. It goes back to what Gene was saying, the parent is primarily responsible for their children. But you get into that social transition in the first ball point, pronouns addressed inconsistent with biological sex. In a day's time, you would have to dismiss probably about 2/3 of the student body at any high school you come across in a day's time. They're addressing it differently from their biological sex. And, talking to my grandchildren and all that, they say that's as common as anything. I don't know how we can regulate that in written form, in books, or something like that.
well, I think it means more that I walked in here with pants on and nobody blinked. But if you came in a dress, that wouldn't be the normal appearance that we would expect. So it's that. It's not talking about wearing black or goth or other things. I don't know, does anybody else want to weigh in on that?
That's one of the reasons
Brian, I really appreciate it, but we need to let the committee have an opportunity to weigh in. It's the working committee.
I would agree with what Brian said about using the word care instead of control, and then legal guardian. I would certainly be in favor of that. And I do understand the idea of having the bullet points so that staff has something to look at. I'm also very open to framing it inside the paragraph. To me, the bigger issue is that the parent is the authority of their child. Like, if that is what comes across, to me, that's the main thing, and I think that's the thing that we want, if this gets approved, that the board and the library staff understand. It is not getting rid of books. It's not banning books. It is saying, for the very thing Elizabeth said from the George book, let's see if parents and children can have communication, have conversations about these things, instead of being introduced to these things through a book, and then the book itself being the teacher of the child instead of the parent being able to talk to their child about what it is that they're reading. I think the thing that we run into is that the bullet points make it look like we're targeting those things, whereas I don't think that is our desire. Our desire is to give some handles for staff to understand that when a book is coming to them, that these are some of the categories. So I'm open to having it in a paragraph form as well, too.
I'd like to make a motion to add or legal guardians after the word parent and change the word control to care.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Anyone discuss more on those two changes?
Just those two changes.
I that's what the motion is.
Um,
Parents or legal guardians is what you,
You're just inserting legal guardian following parents,
yeah.
Parent,
and then
And/or.
changing the word control to care, is what your motion is about, Elizabeth. Includes, and you have a second, so you can ask for more discussion and then take the vote.
Okay, so that's the motion, right? Is that clear? Everybody clear with that? Okay.
That's to amend the language, not the final vote on the full.
no, this is the vote on the amendment.
That's to-
Okay, so a vote on the amendment to add legal guardians and to change children under their control to children under their care. Where were we? Did we second that?
Yes, I think that's a second. Okay.
Let's vote on that. We'll have a vote, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we make those changes.
Couple other points I would just, want to mention for consideration, but the other changes, that I was suggesting, in that second paragraph, if you leave in the words, or materials with characters who are 12 years old or younger, that could apply to an adult novel. That has an ancillary character in it that's a 10-year-old nephew of a main character in the book. And then you're going to end up with a bunch of adult books in the PEC collection that really have no business being in the PEC collection. So that's why I think if you just left it to that end, materials targeting audiences age 0 to 12, I mean, that's what I think the goal of your policies after is those juvenile materials. I don't think you need to include those other words there, because I think that broadens it up too broad to too many materials in the collection that really have no need to be in the PEC collection at all. And then the bullets, again, the social transitioning, I think.
Brian, I'm sorry, I don't want to turn around, but do you mind if we kind of just consider each thing?
Yes.
Did you want to comment on the main characters under 12 or not? Were you?
Well, that was, to be honest, I kind of shared Brian's concern on that. But I wasn't entirely sure. I had a question about what the intent was. If we were talking about young adult novels that had those characters, or all materials.
Would it make it clear? Yeah, I think we were talking about young adult, so would it make it clear if we added main characters? The issue is because there are some books in young adult that are really 12-year-old protagonists and characters. So they're really, I think, because that's the age that the crossover is from juvenile collection to young adult, so they're still 12-year-olds. So the point was, if you have a book about a 12-year-old transitioning, even though it is in our young adult collection, its target character is 12. I understand what you're saying, though, about characters that are adults or have other minor characters in there. I wonder if it would make it clear if we say main characters who are 12 or under. The point was the age. Does anybody want to do something with that?
I would not change that, I think.
Okay,
Leave it just as characters.
okay.
You said, Tom, I'm trying to hear you. You said you would leave it so any book with a character has got.
Yes, I don't think you could just, say it's just the main character. I would think all characters.
Okay.
That's gonna be
Oh, that
very,
is-
very difficult for us to discern as staff in determining what gets relocated.
It's just gonna be a nightmare for staff, period.
It's nigh and impossible without,
Tommy, so
without reading the whole book.
you're wanting adult novels to be moved as well?
No, it's just, no.
Here's just, Tommy, what do you think if we added wording and that said, or materials with characters who are 12 years or younger, which are not already located in the adult section?
Okay, I could go with that.
I mean,
So it is in the adult section,
Could be excluded.
it's already an adult. We don't have to worry about it.
that's my thought.
Mhm.
Correct. show any more sloppy motions.
She'll read that back.
Okay, let's see.
That's not already located in the adult section?
Well, I was saying, or materials, materials in early reader, juvenile, or young adult with characters who are 12 years or younger.
Okay, young adult, so she's, okay.
And it's gonna be very difficult for us to identify these items. Main characters might be easier, but it's still gonna be a challenge. First phrase, if it's a target audience, it's usually evident in a review, or it's easier to discern than the characters in the story, unless the review says it's about a 12-year-old, or it's about, whatever an age person. If it's not in a description of the book that's readily available to us, then it would be very difficult to discern.
Is it clear enough if we just say materials targeting audiences 0 to 12?
And then take out the materials with characters who are 12 years or younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even if it's in YA, if the character's 12 years old, that falls under that.
That's true. Okay. Then I move to strike or materials with characters who are 12 years old or younger.
Okay. Anybody second that? Okay. Any more discussion on that?
Jill will read it back.
You say you know what you said?
Yeah.
Yes, so with the motion, it would read to that end, materials targeting audiences aged 0 to 12, in which illustrations, comma.
Right.
So we're just striking the phrase or materials with characters who are 12 years old or younger.
Okay, so do we have a vote on all those in favor? Did we second that yet? Tommy did, okay. We have a vote on striking that phrase, or materials with characters who are 12 years old or younger. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes. We still have a motion on the table for the original, right? Or not? Yeah, we do.
You're in the process of amending the originals.
Okay. Any more from the committee first? Amendments from the committee?
I think that the bullet points are very helpful. Having gone through what I think is all, if not all, most of the books in the juvenile section that meet this, that I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, and I believe that children who express themselves that way are worthy of respect and all the same opportunities as any other child. I think that the books that we have in our collection that emphasize the social transitioning, where that dressing inconsistent with biological sex, that is the main theme of the book, that is different to me than what you're describing. I think that's a helpful distinction for staff as they sort the book. I'm supportive of that. And then the other two should not be a surprise. I'm very supportive of anything that is about medical or surgical procedures being somewhere where parents access them first, and the possibility of changing gender being somewhere where parents access them first. I'm not saying that people can't check these out, just that it needs to happen with parental oversight.
Kind of clarified what my concerns were with this bullet is on the social transitioning bullet, pronouns. I think that's vague, I think that's broad, and just the pronouns, what does that mean? Or dress inconsistent with biological sex.
It's my understanding that it's pronouns inconsistent with biological sex or dress inconsistent with biological sex.
Okay. The dress inconsistent with biological sex. I understand what you're saying, but I think, again, that wording could be loosely interpreted. I mean, you have books that feature tomboys. I know it's not a juvenile book, but think about Scout, To Kill a Mockingbird. She dressed like a boy most of the time, you know. Or, you know, I'm sure we might have books in our collection where a little boy, you know, plays dress up with his mom's shoes or gets his fingernails painted. I mean, anybody who's raised little boys knows sometimes little toddlers do that. They see their sister getting their nails painted and they want to get their nails painted too or something. And so I think that wording could be too broadly construed and capture materials that you're not intending to capture. I think the medical procedures, I mean, I think that's clear. I mean, if that's in the material, I mean, I think that's easily identified. And gender fluidity, again, possibility of changing gender, I don't think, or being no gender at all. I mean, maybe I'm just a little dense on the subject, but I don't, you know, understand it. You know, if you're looking at a book, what that is, what that, you know, what that means, how you can identify that. So I think our policy needs to be clear, and a little bit tighter than it is with those bullets, and that's why, you know, I would get rid of the first and third bullet and incorporate that second bullet just into the paragraph.
Well, nobody wakes up, and I've read a lot of books on this and thought about this. Part of the transition, nobody wakes up one morning and decides to go and have their breasts cut off or to have any kind of genital surgery. This is a process. There's, for example, Ollie London, which a lot of detransitioners are coming forward and telling their stories. And he attests to the fact that he was already, of course, uncomfortable with himself, but his introductions to pronouns brought into his mind the idea that, oh, pronouns suggest that you can change your sex, that it's possible to be somebody else, and that introduced and opened up. The books we're talking about with pronouns very clearly, we've all grown up with English books, and we know the I, you, he, she, it of male, female, biological sex pronouns. So the books we're talking about pronouns, I think it's pretty clear. These all refer to discussions that parents should have. Is what we're saying, we're not removing them from the library, but this is a topic that is way too life-changing and has lifelong repercussions for children to be making these decisions because they do not have critical thinking skills, especially 12 and under. They're concrete thinkers and readers, so they're reading and seeing pictures. And we're simply saying, this is a topic covering these areas. Can you call yourself by a different pronoun, a boy when you're a girl? Should you go to school in a dress? Should you take puberty blockers, which lead to sterility if you go from them right on to cross-sex hormones? Children, we are recognizing there are families in the community that generally struggle with this, and this is an issue. Although I find children's literature that embeds these ideas as though they were fact into the stories as a dangerous way to story is powerful and to embed these ideas in stories. I still recognize there are people who want to have these conversations with their children or people who are struggling. At this moment in time, our library doesn't have a whole special family issues department. Our closest is the parent and early childhood. So I defend these 3 stages as parts of the whole social transitioning, the whole medical. Any book you read, they follow a program. So that, if anybody else in the committee wants to.
I hear where you're coming from, but I still believe that you can take out those 2 words, "are dress," and leave, you can say pronouns inconsistent with biological sex. Okay, I can live with that. But dress, that's not our call. That's something I don't see as quite relevant to
Anybody in the committee want to respond to that?
I just wanted to respond back to Brian, I think, like your reference to Scout, and To Kill a Mockingbird, you know, that wasn't the theme, you know, like that was in there, but when I look at this, it says in which illustrations, themes, or storylines affirm. Like, it was in there, but I don't think it's.
It was an important storyline because she was rough and tumble and got fights and stuff. So it wasn't the primary thing, but it was a storyline. You know, so again, I think, you know, we're gonna have books in our collection where there might be an ancillary character who dresses like a tomboy, or an ancillary character who, you know, paints her brother's toenails or something. Or,
I think there's a big distinction between tomboys and presenting that I want to do it for the purpose of being a different sex.
But this
One
policy
is-
does not differentiate between that. And that's, my concern is we're giving the library staff a very difficult job of interpreting the policy and enforcing policy when it is
Okay.
loose like that, where the umbrella is too big and there's a lot of things that could be captured under it, and all of a sudden, there's gonna be a bunch of stuff in the PEC collection, where you're pointing a lot of people over there because the book they're looking for is in the PEC, when it's just a fiction book that's got, you know, a little brother walking around in his mom's heels, you know?
All right. Back to Tommy's point, does anyone on the committee, Tommy, wanted to take out the dressing? Do you want to make a motion about that, Tommy, or?
Yeah, I would make that a motion to take out that, those two words. Or dress.
Offer second.
Yeah, I was looking for my, sorry, my pile here. Okay, do I have a second on that? No. Well, we'll hope the staff can figure out if it's a tomboy or not a tomboy.
That's asking a lot of stuff.
It's really not. I think Elizabeth and I, we've read a great deal of these books, and for one, we're not talking about, you know, half the juvenile collection. And two, the main themes are specifically differentiated, whether I'm uncomfortable in my dress because I don't wear dresses, but I'm still acknowledging my biological sex as a female. Anyway, that was that. Brian, we're gonna, I need to let the committee say anything more, Beth.
Just, that, something Brian said about themes related to, you know, the word main is not there, you've got themes plural.
That's what I was just gonna say, you kind of just said it, Marcia, you mentioned main theme, but that, I don't know if that's in the wording, maybe that helps, because that probably got on the back of the book.
Could help, because main themes are often mentioned in a review or on a book jacket or whatever. There could be multiple themes in a book, and that, I don't know what your intent is.
Well, for example, my only difficulty with that is, say, the way, and I'm sympathetic to the library just reading pre-purchasing reviews, but the reviews on the book George, you wouldn't know, well, maybe you would have known, I guess, on that one that was, but some of them don't give any indication of that. You know, they'll come across as a coming of life, coming of age story, but really have included other themes of coming of age means transitioning. But I don't know, does anyone else on the committee want to address whether we should say main themes and that?
I think my bigger concern, if this is so new, it's so untested, this is something Gina and I keep hitting on, and I think it's so serious. I would rather we err on the side of our net being too wide and catching some books that maybe shouldn't have gotten moved to PC. We were to look at them individually, we say, oh, that one actually probably would have been fine. It's not what we were trying to catch. But I would rather To Kill a Mockingbird end up in PEC than we miss books that parents should be the one overseeing whether or not their children are exposed to it, not children coming across it accidentally in our juvenile section, or us signaling accidentally through our juvenile section that we think this is appropriate for children to learn on their own. So I think, well, I would rather we try it this way, and Bev, if you come back and you say, here's what our staff has done, here's what we've moved, and we're concerned about these, let's assess that then. But I'd rather cast too wide a net now than too small a net.
Okay, any other comment on that? Okay. I keep forgetting where we are in the motions.
We have the amended motion on the floor.
Okay, an amended motion on the floor.
Not an amendment, all the amendments have been
Okay,
voted on.
so we have this main motion on the floor, yes, and seconded, yes, okay. All right. The committee has no further comment. We'll vote. All those in favor, do you want to, let me see if I can get through how this reads now. Unless Jill wants to read it.
Go for it.
Oh. Okay, the library recognizes parents
Slash legal guardians.
slash
Legal guardians.
and legal or legal slash
Just
or
slash principal.
slash legal guardians are the primary source of education for their children, and that they have a fundamental right and responsibility to direct the upbringing and education of children under their care, including issues of moral, social, physical, civic, and spiritual development. To that end, materials targeting audiences age 0 to 12, in which the illustrations, themes, or storylines affirm, portray, or discuss changing the appearance of a minor's gender in ways inconsistent with a minor's biological sex, will be located in the Parenting and Early Childhood PC collection, including social transitioning, pronouns or dress inconsistent with biological sex, medical or surgical procedures, such as puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, or surgical procedures for the purpose of altering biological sex, and gender fluidity, the possibility of changing genders at will or being no gender at all. Those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, this will go to the full board next week for more discussion.
Jill, did you get?
You good, Jill?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion to go home? To close?
I move to adjourn.
Okay. Anybody second?